Hello, everybody, and welcome to the February 6, 2019 edition of the Ephrom Josine Show. I am your host, Ephrom Josine. Anyway, the State of the Union address happened last night. It was okay. No, seriously, it wasn't great, it wasn't awful. It was just sort of okay. Now, most of the address had basically no policy proposals. You know, a lot of it was just him bringing up random people. Now, sometimes they were actually kind of interesting. Like, at one point, he showed some World War II veterans, or people who have survived the Holocaust, which I have a guilty pleasure for that kind of thing. I absolutely loved that part. But again, I'm very biased in that favor. However, I still couldn't help but notice there was a distinct lack of policy the entire time. And even when he would discuss policy, it was always with this round of, well, this isn't what you're here for. You're here to watch me be awesome. Now, mind you, if you already think that Donald Trump is the greatest thing of all time, then your name is probably Donald Trump, but that's besides the point. Or maybe Sean Hannity. That's also possibly your name. You could have, or I guess theoretically you could have any name, but that's all besides the point. However, if you weren't big on him, I doubt this really changed your opinion on him through that. Because most of it was just an egotistical brag. However, there were some specific parts I'd like to talk about. Because I've noticed there's like this pyramid. And it's the really good stuff, the mixed stuff, and then the atrocious stuff. The really good stuff is just sort of him showing Americans that he likes, and these are the ideal Americans. That part's really good. The mixed stuff is him proposing newer policies that you know he's never going to implement. You know, for instance, it's the second State of the Union in a row where he's proposed paid family leave. Still hasn't written a single legislation on that. By the way, what happened to the infrastructure project? Remember that? That was like a big thing in the campaign. Whatever happened to that? But all that's besides the point. And then for that matter, there were also, you know, he was talking about attempting to basically get rid of child cancer, which I don't know a single person who's in favor of child cancer. I don't know. I can't even, like, make up a person to be in favor of child cancer. It would have to be someone so evil. Ted Cruz. He theoretically is almost evil enough. Not quite evil enough, but almost. But he didn't actually propose a way to do that. If anything, if you look at it, he's proposed cuts to Medicaid several times, and that actually helps cancer treatment. That actually gives poor people cancer treatment, but that doesn't matter. That just doesn't matter. And he was also talking about, oh, well, we're going to eradicate HIV. And of course, that caused, like, basically a standing ovation. And Mike Pence was up there clapping his hands all like, yeah! Meanwhile, Mike Pence is also the man who had HIV spike as governor of Indiana because he cut funding for needle exchange programs and sex education programs and Planned Parenthood, and therefore HIV went up greatly. But he wants to see the eradication of HIV. He just doesn't want to do anything about it. And then, of course, there's, you know, when he starts talking about abortion, where he's talking about, we're going to ban late-term abortions. Which, side note, I know it's the most common joke about this movement, the pro-life movement. One I may have even told once or twice. I usually avoid telling it. But if you look at who was standing up, all the women in Congress didn't clap for it. All the old white guys in Congress, they loved it. They absolutely loved it. You know, it just makes you think. And then, you know, the rest of it was just the typical Republican talking points. They were things like, Iran is the biggest state sponsor of terrorism. That's not true. Saudi Arabia is, if you look at terrorism for the U.S. Anything else is not really the U.S.'s problem. This is something he said himself. And what I think was actually a really good line, it was along the lines of, good nations don't fight endless wars. And he actually pointed out that we've been in endless war in Iraq and Afghanistan for years now, to his credit. But no, Iran is the biggest state sponsor of terrorism for Israel, and therefore they're our problem, and we need to keep giving Israel money to build their military so they can be safe, but they have a wall that's making them safe, therefore we should have their wall that's making them safe, which they probably only have because of the money we gave them, on a side note. And then I'm just going to wait for my head to explode. And of course, there was the manufactured immigration crisis, even though illegal immigration from Mexico has been at a net zero since 2007. And how we need the wall to fix this, despite the fact we already put up a fence in several areas, and it's nearly destroyed. At this rate, my only question is, what exactly happened to the solar wall? Remember that? That thing could have actually probably paid for itself. But no, the one time this president comes up with a rational idea that actually would make one of his idiotic policies less idiotic, it just sort of gets thrown away. Anyway, I am convinced Virginia may just have the worst DNC in existence. I swear to God. Because we just covered their governor, soon former governor, Ralph Northam, admitting to wearing blackface, and then not admitting to wearing blackface, and then nearly moonwalking. However, things have heated up a little bit recently. As of right now, there have been accusations that Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax sexually assaulted someone. The accuser's name is Vanessa Tyson, and it should be noted that outlets only ran with this story after Republicans simply demanded they did. Washington Post rejected the story initially due to lack of evidence, but now I guess the evidence is there because they ran a story of it today. The case basically goes that Tyson was assaulted by Fairfax during the 2004 National Convention. She has no evidence of this as of right now. While we're at it, unlike Ford, she doesn't seem to have much evidence she's told anybody. It took her much longer to actually get... This is going to sound a little bit... Okay, so I'm trying to word myself carefully. But it took her longer after she gave the accusation to come out and say who she was. And so on and so on. Now, I'm not saying these are inaccurate. It's perfectly possible that Fairfax did assault her, in which case I would encourage him to step down. And I will be looking for the big gotcha moment, where it's, oh, this is the undisputable evidence. I found a few of those with Kavanaugh, but I can't find any. I honest to God cannot find any here, but okay, one more thing. Virginia Attorney General Mark Herring recently decided to defend Northam by saying that he himself wore blackface in 1980. Perfectly normal defense. So let's just review it. Then the Virginia governor comes out and says, I wore blackface in the 80s. Everyone else goes. And then Herring just comes out and screams, so did I! But of course, Herring should not step down because he wore blackface in the 1980s, for God's sake. He wasn't a public figure then, and most people did stupid things 30 years ago. If you're watching this 30 years from now, you did something stupid 30 years ago. Let's be real here. I'm Ephrom, and good night.